Good morning. I am Dean Sampson. I'm a member of the board, and I have this wonderful pleasure of making announcements this morning and welcoming you all. The announcements are on the back of the order of service, so if I confuse anybody, there's a reference here. On February 19th, which is tomorrow, at, it doesn't give the time here. There's a Climate Smart Challenge virtual meeting, and Mike Cox is the person to contact. And unfortunately, I don't have the time. I think it's 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Thank you. On February 21st, which is Wednesday, Cedars is preparing and serving the evening meal for the Suquamish Community Kitchen. We expect 30 to 50 guests, and if you would like to join us and see how this works for later operations, we're hoping to be able to do this monthly. For the kitchen crew, we need to arrive about 2 o'clock, and it's a 5 o'clock meal. There are a lot of other jobs that can be done and don't have to be there quite so early. If you have any questions, contact Jeff Phillip or Rod Kemkes. And on Thursday, February 22nd, there is a meeting at the Cedar Center, Navigating a Political Year, 4 o'clock. Join Reverend Zachary for a conversation around navigating difficult conversations in an election year. That may apply this year. Now, it is my honor to welcome Reverend Victoria Poling as our guest minister today. Reverend Victoria uses she, her pronouns and identifies as a queer, white, Hispanic, Pacific Northwesterner. She serves as minister to the Vashon Island Unitarian Universalists and to Kitsap UU Fellowship. Reverend Victoria lives with her partner and 3 cats in Kent, Washington, on the traditional Muckleshoot territories in the Green River watershed. Reverend Victoria, it's my pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you, Dean. It's an honor to be with you. I bring you greetings from both of my congregations. Our opening words this morning are by Reverend Rebecca Savage, called "Justice is Our Prayer." We gather together today with sacred intention to declare that justice is our prayer. We affirm in covenant with the beloved community that is possible. Not here, not quite yet. The seeds have been planted time and time again. And we remember all those who went before us, who made this beloved community in our time a dream that could be realized. Justice is our prayer. May our time together continue to water the budding trees of our diverse interdependence. May our time together give air and nourishment to the parts of our collective spirits that need to grow and thrive in order to embrace equity as a known way of being. Justice is our prayer. We affirm in covenant with the beloved community that this is possible. May it be so. Let us worship together. Now let's join in our prelude down to the river to pray.
Thank you, Audrey. That was beautiful. Good morning and welcome to Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Johanna Munson, and it is my honor to be your worship associate today. Home is where the heart is. We're all familiar with this saying, but what about our emotional attachment to these physical spaces we call home and to the contents of those spaces? Have you thought about the roles you play in those homes? As I think about the homes I've lived in as an adult, I get an image of expansion and contraction. When I met my husband-to-be, we were both in graduate school in Monterey, California, living in one-bedroom places with a hodgepodge of furniture. I moved in with him and we combined our belongings. I just moved back from Japan and he was in the military and had just come back from Korea, so it was pretty simple. And we each added the role of spouse to our identities. Over the years of our marriage, we went from that apartment to a townhome, several single-family homes in the DC area, to a row house in Philadelphia, then to a 3,300 square foot home here on Bainbridge Island. We collected furniture, inherited some big pieces, always had a piano, and of course had all the possessions that come with kids and their activities. Suffice it to say, the house, the garage, and storage under the house were full. Adding the role of parent to those we already identified with expanded our sense of selves in those years as well. The marriage ended in 2011 and he moved out, but both my children were still in school, so I stayed in that house until they had graduated in 2016. My sister and niece moved in with us that last year, so I was thrilled to have room for them. But they found their own place in that summer of 2016, and I didn't need 4 bedrooms and 3.5 baths. I knew it was time to downsize and was lucky to find a 2-bedroom cottage that I've been renting ever since. Going from 3,300 square feet to 1,200 square feet in that cottage required a lot of sorting through things. And I remember there was a lovely group of women from Cedars, some of them are here today, who helped me pack and move things out. Such a wonderful feeling. But my identity had changed big time. I was no longer a spouse or a full-time parent. So that space opened up for me to do deep self-exploration, taking on new visions of what was possible for me and leading me to my dream job, combining so many of my experiences and talents. Now I'm looking at moving again to an even smaller home. So I'm considering, what do I need to let go of, and what will I take with me? Can I let go of something that once felt central to my identity? That thing is sewing, making clothes for me and my family, creating costumes for my daughter's dance studio productions. I still have a lot of fabric in tubs in the garage. That's part of my home. I've got 4 different sewing machines, all the thread and patterns and buttons and on and on. I haven't sewn regularly in years, but I still identify as a sewist. We don't call ourselves sewers or sewers, sewist. But as I look into the future, am I going to have time and energy to devote to this? Am I going to be physically able? My vision is not so great anymore, dexterity, brain capacity, all that is changing. Plus, sewing for grandchildren, I don't have any. My kids are not showing any signs of being ready to be parents themselves. So I guess I'll know the answer when it comes time to move. I dedicate the lighting of our chalice today to our capacity as humans to embrace new circumstances and release what no longer serves us. Please join me in reciting our affirmation as printed in the order of service. As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, and to live lives full of love and goodness because that is how we will all become the best that we can be.
Lift every voice and sing, and we will sing all 3 verses. Please rise.
Some of you here know or knew my father, and he put a lot of importance on feeling useful. I remember him when he moved into assisted living. He asked to be allowed to put out napkins and silverware in the dining room when he moved, but the response was always, residents don't have to do that. What if they want to? What if it makes them feel needed and part of the community? I know, lots of issues with germs and so on, but I think that could all be managed. I have a vision of a facility that I could create here on Bainbridge Island in the Ordway School. Ordway is now going to continue to be a school that was up in the air for a little while. But I have this vision of little pods, so there'd be 5 or 6 bedrooms around a central area. There'd be a kitchen where people could help make meals, whatever their identity that they brought into that community, they would be able to keep it. It could be something simple, being of use, doing those day-to-day tasks. It could be gardening, keeping the beds around the property beautiful. So in our Time for All Ages today, I'm going to ask you to consider, first of all, just 30 seconds, what is a really important role, identity that you have, that you would like to take with you, no matter where you go? Okay, so 30 seconds, and I will do our little bell to start and our bell to end. Not going to share yet, just a minute. We will have time for sharing. So instead of sharing with the group, I'm going to ask you to talk to your neighbor, maybe somebody you haven't talked to before. Share your what you came up with. And I'll give you about 2 minutes for the first person to share, and then 2 minutes for the other person to share, and then we will just go and pass the microphone around to a few people. So something that you would take with you no matter where you go that's really important to you. Would you take with you? Okay, please switch, 2 more minutes. And if you're at home doing this, please consider yourself. What would you bring with you? Okay, we have time just for a couple of people to share. Anybody like to share what they would take with them?
My dog.
Your dog, okay. Not letting go of that dog. Yeah.
Friend of the dog.
We have people devoted to dogs here. Yes, friend of the dog.
Yeah, I was telling Fran that I would take books and definitely be a facilitator or a role of librarian or whatever to help engage and discuss and at least encourage continuing of reading.
That's so critical. My dad's worst nightmare was bingo at the assisted living. That was the extent of the activities that they offered, and yeah, not up to his standards. Two more. How about over here? Mary, you wanted to share?
And I can't use one bedroom because it's full of stuff I have to get rid of. And mostly right now it's clothes. So do you think I should keep this skirt or not?
Yes, yes. Great. Well, thank you so much for participating in this exercise. You know, roles change, life changes, and really appreciate you putting some thought into that this morning.
Let us now enter into a time of meditation and centering. I'll first share a reading by Reverend Rebecca Savage, and then we'll hold a moment of silence. Spirit of life, eternal mystery that holds us close, receive the meditations of our hearts this day. We come together in this quiet moment to unify our hearts again towards the clarion call of our time. May justice and equity guide us to greater connection, a greater truth. Our part is just as great to approach dismantling systems of oppression within us in order for us all to be free. To know that when I cherish and tend to the divine spark within me, when I know in my bones that I am worthy of love and whole just as I am, that there is greater potential for mutual understanding and care. Love is not scarce. However, our ability to extend compassion and grace can be. I place my hand over my heart and know I can feel the spirit of life within me. I invite you to place your hand over your heart and feel the spirit of life within you. The spirit of life is divine within us. The spirit of life is here. This is the beginning of justice and equity when we go within, in order to be of service in our communities and our world. May it be so. Amen.
Turn. My turn again. On most Sundays, we offer a chance for our participants here to share joys and sorrows. This is a time for you to state your name, a brief sentence or two about a joy or a sorrow that you are willing to share. This part of the service is neither live streamed nor recorded. And so for those at home watching, we invite you to also consider your joys and sorrows, knowing that we hold you in our hearts as well. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, please come forward. and pour a little water to celebrate with you any joys that remain. And now we will sing.
We'll be singing from our teal hymnal, number 1002, Comfort Me. Please note there are 5 verses. We'll sing all of them. Please rise and bow your spirit as you are betrothed and willing. Join me in singing our song.
We have a community called Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church, and we have seen cycles of expansion and contraction happen within our community, and expansion again. Members take on roles such as board member, committee chair, setup leader, worship associate, song leader, sometimes many at once, and many more. And then when the time is right, they move on, or to a different role. Ministers come and go, and what keeps us functioning is our willingness to stay in relationship to each other. One aspect that doesn't shift is that our community is financially dependent upon your generosity. There is no nationwide or worldwide body that we get funds from. As the ushers pass the baskets, please share your resources as generously as you are able. Would the ushers please come forward to collect the offering? Thank you so much for your generous gifts.
I'd like to share some stories with you today. Some stories about justice and equity considerations in assisted living. I know some of you here are likely in assisted or independent living, and some of you have accompanied parents along that journey, and some of you will someday be on that journey yourselves. Now, my experience is before becoming a parish minister, I served as a chaplain intern in both independent and assisted living, in a place where there were hundreds of people living together, sharing housing and meals and activities. And as I met with people and listened to their stories and responded to spiritual care needs, I heard a number of different kinds of longings. One of those longings was for companionship, the kind of companionship where you can tell your story to some sympathetic person and they'll just listen. And I also heard grief over the loss of friends and loved ones. And I also heard confusion about identity and purpose. Who am I now, and what does it mean that I'm here? And this confusion included what to call being in the later years of life. Someone would say, well, I'm a senior, so I get the senior discount. One person I met had an adult daughter who lovingly called him mild man, which made him laugh. Now, those of you here of a certain age may not think of yourselves as elders, but that was another term that was used. So if the term elder doesn't resonate with you as people who feel younger at heart, I appreciate that. I want to speak a little bit to this term. As Johanna reflected on earlier, feeling needed and taking part in personally meaningful work is key to a sense of feeling young. So one of the terms I like to use is elders because it honors an important kind of work. Being an elder is not just about age, it's a sacred role. You are eldering when you pass on valuable teaching stories and memories to younger adults to wrestle with in order to meet their own challenges. Now, in this assisted living community, there was a very strong focus on maintaining a youthful outlook, and the advertising on the wall insisted that we are transforming age. I wasn't totally sure what we are transforming age into, but we were transforming it all right. And that led me to reflect a little bit on the culture there. You see, white upper middle class European American culture is uncomfortable with aging. Most of the residents there who I met had moved into this shared housing when they were in their 80s and 90s. Racially, they were about 98% white, and many were actually first-generation European immigrants who came to the US during and following World War II. And they had financial capacity to move into this place. This was one of the big fancy ones that required a person to have, and don't hold your breath on this, but at least 1.4 million in assets in order to move in. So these were folks who had had successes financially and professionally and were even experts in their fields. So as these folks transitioned into shared housing, I wondered, what will a meaningful life look like as a person who now lives in a care facility? And in independent living, for some, it really was, as Johanna described, a time of self-exploration and reimagining what was possible. One of the important spiritual activities that we engaged in for this stage of life is called life review. And in your life review, you write or record or tell stories, the important stories that still move you and that make you laugh and cry and remind you of who you are and who you value and who your community is. So my role became to be the story catcher. I led a This I Believe workshop in which people shared an important memory and then reflected on what that story had to teach us about what is important now, at this time in life. And I was moved to tears hearing one man's reflection of serving in Vietnam and the missions of peace and reconciliation that he participated in, returning years later. The teaching message from that story was clear, that it is worth doing what you can do to make amends. He gifted me his life experience as a teaching story that day. So you too can be a story catcher here in this congregation. While you're together, I encourage you to take turns intentionally sharing these important memories and stories. You can start today at coffee hour. You can even record each other on your phones. It's just a button away. And you can even send these sound files to friends and family members. And if you're younger, I encourage you to be open to helping someone figure out how to do that. So being story catchers is something that you can do to create beloved community here. And that is an equitable thing to do for folks as we move into this time of life when we may have fewer people to share those stories with. In assisted living, some people I met were in a time of grappling with increased limitations and isolation that can bring. I remember Sharon, whose husband of 65 years had died, and her grief was raw. But when we chatted about her days as a World War II nurse, her face just lit up, and she remembered the camaraderie and the strength that she drew from being with the girls in that hard time. And she realized that in her 80s now, she was once again one of the girls, as she spent time with other women who were widows. And this image, this memory, gave her strength and encouragement, and that was a story worth catching. Sharon had also let go of something that felt central to her identity. Having lost dexterity in her hands, she was no longer writing or typing poetry. And even as she accepted this reality, she confided with sadness, "I'm not sure what my purpose is anymore." So we spoke a little bit about spirituality, and I learned that she wasn't religious. None of that resonated with her. But when I picked up one of her poetry books and started reading out loud, I could see the spark of spirit in her eyes. And she joined me, reciting treasured lines from memory. We discovered something purposeful that she could do with joy, and that was listening and reciting. In our congregations, too, we often read poetry, and we recite together, like the words for the lighting of our chalice. And these are a gift for all ages that can stay with us as we carry them with us in our memories through repetition. So when you visit your congregants in assisted living, you might bring a book of readings with you and offer some familiar words or a poem, because visiting is part of how we give purpose to our friends who live at the margins of our beloved community. Because living apart from the rhythms of family and congregational life, work and politics and cultural life, I know many people worry about gradually becoming marginalized. And that is a justice issue. As our physical needs of warmth and meals and health are taken care of, the spiritual need to be seen and spoken to as a friend, as a person, an important person who has a reason for being, that remains. So sometimes it takes creativity to find a new purpose. I remember Joe, who made up a job for himself as a greeter. I asked him if he'd been a churchgoer because he did what our UU greeters do, and he hadn't been, but he was terrific at it. He welcomed everyone who came in the door, and if they had seemed uncertain where to go, he guided them. I really admired Joe's creativity. He made hospitality rounds to the staff, bringing coffee or tea from the lounge, and it made such an impact on me to see Joe coming down the hallway with a big smile on his face asking, "Hey, can I get you a cup of coffee?" And I always said yes, even if I didn't need one, because I treasured the joy that it brought both of us. So Joe found a way to keep on creating purposeful, beloved community right there, right where he was. And he used what was available to him already. The coffee and tea were free. So a large part of what gives a purposeful shape to these elder years is relationships of mutual respect and care. But meeting the need for ongoing, meaningful relationships in assisted living is complicated. I really like Johanna's seed idea of creating chosen family among residents. However, building chosen family with staff involves a set of justice issues around labor and immigration, language, and race. See, many of the assisted living care staff who I met had something in common with the residents. They were first-generation immigrants and English language learners. Most were people of color. And while the nearly 1-to-1 staff-to-resident ratio seemed ideal, it meant that they earned low wages for demanding and sometimes dangerous physical and emotional labor. I'll share one more story. While holding Sunday afternoon church service at the facility, I met Hamid, who worked on the memory care floor. Hamid found this work as a certified nursing assistant through his extended family after emigrating to the U.S. from Ethiopia in his mid-20s. He was an observant Muslim, and his English was limited but growing. So his day included transferring people in his care out of bed to a wheelchair, providing personal care, and taking them to the dining hall and then to activities. And sometimes folks from the memory care floor were confused about what was happening. And so Hamid would occasionally receive emotional and sometimes physical injuries from those who were scared and did not have the ability to restrain themselves. So I noticed that he felt hesitant about building relationships, and his physical interactions, while gentle with his residents, were shy and a little bit awkward. And I wondered how his experience as a male caregiver in a mostly female profession influenced his self-assuredness, especially as he also was experiencing being a racial, ethnic, religious, and linguistic minority. That was a lot for a young man to handle. So institutional rules also limited the deepening of friendships between staff and residents. For example, while staff technically were allowed to stay and eat meals with residents, the facility charged $12 for the meal. And certified nursing assistants made minimum wage. So there was no time to relax and spend time with residents. And many of the CNAs commuted up to 2 hours into the city because rent in the city was too expensive. So a different kind of assisted living is really sorely needed. And in this dream of beloved community, caregivers would also have safe enough and materially adequate and meaningful work. In our opening words, we prayed for the beloved community that is possible, that's not here, not quite yet, and we remembered those who went before us, who made beloved community in our time a dream that could be realized. And we invoked the intention to water dream seeds. So let's water Johanna's dream of providing subsidized housing to staff at nearby but separate locations with substantial wages and full benefits. And here's another dream seed. Instead of demeaning caregiving as a low-status job, instead of offering tuition stipends to provide education towards a higher status job, what if we reimagined caregiving as a respected and skilled and well-paid profession with excellent health care? Imagine that. Imagine the kind of mutually respectful and caring relationships that could grow from there. Because here's the heart of the matter for us. These scenarios, this assisted living, these are the present and future for many UUs. There were Unitarian Universalists at the place where I was an intern, and people in my congregation currently have parents there. However, there will also be many people here who receive care from family members at home. And some of you are probably already giving or receiving care from a family member right now. So while those who have means are living in assisted living, families actually provide the bulk of caregiving for elders in the U.S. And with families spread out across the country, caring for 2 or more parents at once can fall on one adult child. So this is why the occupation with the highest expected growth between 2012 and 2022 was an independent personal care aide. Some of us here already are or will become caregivers. Some paid, mostly as support to family and other loved ones. And how will we experience being a family caregiver or employee in the homes of others? How will we advocate for our rights and our needs as people with loving hearts filling this very important role? As UUs, we advocate for equitable and just relationships of mutual care and concern. We have lots of experience making covenants and communicating with each other what mutual respect looks like. As a caregiver, what if you wrote up a covenant that describes how you would like to be treated and share this with your family and the persons you work for? And as someone receiving care, what if you wrote up a covenant that describes how you would like to be able to treat your caregivers, even if you're no longer able to make conscious choices? Can you imagine the impact that receiving that could have on someone to say, here's what I wish I could do and how I wish I could be and how I would like to see you as a person, to know that that intention was there. And you could make your wishes known by communicating this to a friend or a family member or neighbor, whoever who's assisting you in the future. I really deeply appreciate Johanna's future vision of a community where housing is available both for folks who need to receive care and for caregivers. Because too often I've heard people dream of having an in-home, live-in caregiver who only needs one room, which would limit them to having no personal life or family life of their own. And this model has a history that we need to be conscious of. And this is my last point here on equity and justice, is that this model has a history of servitude, a colonial history. White feminist theologian Sandra Beardsall calls on women especially to learn to claim power and be willing to take risks, to surrender our isolation and the identity that comes with it for the opportunity to build a new kind of community. So as you here in your congregation reimagine home and reimagine caregiving and care receiving, sharing your stories and your dreams, please remember to do so through the lens of understanding historical privilege and oppression in these roles, and seek your own liberation, because we need each other in this. We need each other as our congregations are aging, and we need each other in order to realize this dream, not yet here, but we're still working on it, of making beloved community. May justice and equity guide us to greater connection and greater truth. May it be so. Please join me, rising in body or spirit, to sing hymn number 168, One More Step, which is in your gray hymnal. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing words today are by Reverend Rebecca Savage. We've come to the end of our service, but not our calling in the world. May we close our time together with the humble reminder that justice and equity are our spiritual practices to embrace. Each day, every day, we are blessed to be the embodiment of what is possible. May we go forth with the light and warmth of the chalice in our hearts until we are together again.